Hi, my name is David Wilburn, and I'm going to talk about creating positive change within your organization. Actually, as the title suggests, I'm really going to be talking about how not to create positive change in your organization. I'm going to use the popular show Game of Thrones as an example. I love Game of Thrones. When I got introduced to the show, I thought it was fascinating, the acting was great, the situation was intriguing, and as I was watching the show, couldn't help but notice Sean Bean playing Ned Stark. He was the epitome of a hero. He was strong, he was noble, he exhibited the highest level of integrity in all of his actions. He was a great person. He was kind to his children. He was an awesome leader. And I thought that making him Hand of the King was an awesome move. He would be a great Hand of the King. The number 2 most powerful person in Westeros. What could be better? So imagine my shock, along of course with everyone else, back in season 1 when he was beheaded. But the more I thought about that and I considered my experience within educational organizations that I've worked for, as well as experience with other types of organizations, medical organizations, in my consulting experience, how many times I've seen problems of the same type that Ned Stark experienced that people would have within their organizations when they were trying to create positive change. So I think really we can look at 3 primary reasons that caused Ned Stark to be beheaded, and we can relate them with the types of problems that employees sometimes run into within the organizations that they work for. The first problem is the problem of understanding how power works within the organization that you work in. Now, we know Ned Stark was a powerful man. He was extremely powerful, and he was in a position of very high power. He was second only to the king as Hand of the King. So it would seem apparent that with that much power, he would be able to pretty much enforce his will on anything that was taking place within King's Landing and Westeros in general. But what Ned Stark didn't take into account is he was only considering the official or legal channels through which power transmitted in King's Landing. He wasn't taking into account the back channels of power. And think about it. He was pretty inflexible because he was approached several times. He was approached by Lord Peter Baelish. He was approached by Lord Varys. He was approached by Renly Baratheon. They made suggestions of how he should deal with his situation through the back channels of power. They tried to tell him, listen, Lord Stark, you may think that you know how to deal with this, but I'm here to tell you that it may not work that way. Ned Stark held up his manual to being Hand of the King and said, these are the rules, and as long as I follow these, everything is gonna be fine. And they tried to tell him, I know you have the rules, but it doesn't work like that here. He was inflexible. He ignored the advice that they were trying to give him as far as understanding how the organization he was in truly works. And that's one major area in which he ran afoul. The second area is he didn't take proper account of the strength of the resistance that he was to face. He felt that I'm hand of the king. I'm the number 2 person in King's Landing, second only to Robert Baratheon. So what I say goes. And if I say this should change, then it must change. But what he didn't understand in his case was that the Lannisters had other plans. They wanted power. They were ambitious, and they were determined to get that power by whatever means or whatever actions they had to take in order to make that happen. Now that's a situation where you're in an organization and you're saying, I have the rules behind me, I have the power behind me, but what you don't understand is that there may be an individual or a coalition of people who are very invested in the status quo. They benefit strongly from the status quo, and they're going to do everything in their power to undermine you and prevent that change from happening. And like I keep talking about rules, you may believe that you have the rule book on your side, but you have to be cognizant of the fact that sometimes those people are playing by a different set of rules. Finally, I go back to my original statement, looking at Sean Bean, looking at Ned Stark, and what an incredible, effective, powerful, thoughtful, kind, considerate Warden of the North and Lord of Winterfell he was. Why wouldn't he be a great hand of the king? Well, I think it's a simple case of job fit. Despite how great he was at being Lord of Winterfell, when his role within the organization changed, he found himself a fish out of water. He was in a different environment, like I said, that played by a whole different set of rules, and that had back channels that he wasn't aware of, and even when made aware, he didn't really consider them to be important. So the bottom line is, whereas he was the master of everything he beheld, as long as he was in Winterfell, once he came to King's Landing, he was bad at the job of hand of the king. Now, that's probably an unpopular opinion. You look at him and you say, but he had integrity, but he was honest, and most importantly, he was right. I mean, let's consider, essentially, the Lannisters conspired to place the Queen's child of incest as heir to the Iron Throne. They couldn't have been more wrong. They were dastardly and deceitful, and Ned Stark was right. Unfortunately, what he did wrong was he tried to wear being right as if it was armor and as if it would protect him from the back channels of power, from the different rules that people within that organization were playing by, and from the strength of resistance that he ended up encountering. That made him a terrible hand of the king. So he did not fit within that role at all. So be cognizant of a person who is successful in one role may not be successful in another role within that organization. I hope this video has been informative and gives you something to think about when you're trying to make or create positive change within the organization that you work for. Make sure you're cognizant of all of these factors. Know where the de facto power is within your organization. Understand the real rules that people play by. Know who your opposition is. Understand what they want, and if possible, be prepared to discuss or negotiate with them in order to make sure that they are not going to be a set in stone resistance to the change you're trying to create. And most of all, make sure you are really appropriate. You're really the appropriate person, I should say, to be making the change that you feel should exist within the organization. Thank you. Have a good day.